welcome to Half the Battle. We're going back to the comic series this week. To the Special Mission series to be precise, and we'll be looking at issue 2, Words of Honor. The cover is fine for the most part, 3 Joes engaged in a firefight, but one thing stands out. Roadblock's freaking face. That doesn't look like him. That looks like the freaking Green Goblin. The opening page has the Joes looking at photos of a German bomber stuck in a glacier in Greenland. A World War II German bomber that was on its way to bomb New York, but for some reason crashed. With news of the plane being reported all over the world, a wanted Nazi war criminal who's hiding out in Brazil has come forth claiming the bomber was carrying enough nerve toxin to take out half the eastern seaboard. He claims he's the only one who knows how to disarm the gas canisters, and would very much like to stop being a wanted war criminal in exchange for his help. By the way, his name is Otto Totenschädel. Totenschädel literally translates to skull, but it means death's head in this context, a symbol of death. He was head of the poison gas research at Sachsenhausen. That's a real concentration camp, by the way. The US has taken the deal, so Snowjob and a team will head to the bomber, while Clutch, Roadblock, Dialtone and Recondo are already in Brazil to get the Nazi. And there are 2 mistakes here. Well, one mistake was actually on the cover, because there, Roadblock is wearing his version 1 uniform, but all throughout the actual comic, he's in his version 2 outfit. The second mistake is that for one panel, Dialtone is pulling a Tropic Thunder and is black. Otto is enjoying the hospitality of sons of SS troops in a Nazi compound in Brazil. And by the way, you can tell this guy looks like a real fine example of the master race. Clutch has a personal reason to dislike this mission. His grandmother was a camp survivor. He found out when, as a kid, he was watching Hogan's Heroes, which caused her to have a PTSD flashback. I obviously have no jokes here, but as it's my job to comment on the story, I need to point out that for legal reasons, they didn't name the show Hogan's Heroes. They just called it the sitcom about POWs during World War II. Clutch's talk was overheard by somebody, in fact by a whole unit of armed men. They say they're banditos, but the Joes immediately identify them as Mossad, Israeli intelligence, with the group comprised of Moroccan and Mediterranean Jews. And though it isn't said, I assume they knew they weren't bandits, because I don't see bandits sneaking up on a team of Joes. Especially one that has Recondo with them, the sneaking jungle expert. Ibrahim, their leader, identifies them as the Joe team, saying they're too scruffy to be Delta Force. Which is funny, because way back in issue 1, G.I.Joe was called Special Counter-Terrorist Group Delta. He also says they're not weird enough to be SOG. SOG? S-O-G? Yeah, while I can't be 100% sure, this probably refers to the Studies and Observations Group, a special unit during the Vietnam War that ran covert ops. This is the most likely explanation due to Larry Hama's Vietnam expertise. Though it is fun to assume they mean the Sarkilda Operations Group and the Swedish Special Forces. If you ignore that group didn't exist in the 80s. Anyway, the Joes surrender, though Roadblock has to knock Recondo out to do so. Meanwhile, the other Joe team have arrived at the glacier, but since the Tomahawk can't risk landing, they have to rappel down and are on their own dealing with the bomber. Though not completely on their own, since Dr. Death has also struck a deal with Cobra, who are there to secure the gas for their own purposes, led by Firefly. And this is one of the few times we actually see a Hiss driver, though he's colored all wrong. Blue and yellow instead of red and black. Back in Brazil, Clutch and Ibrahim discuss the situation, and while Ibrahim believes Clutch, having overheard his story, he doesn't believe Otto is telling the truth. He also explains that the doctor experimented with nerve toxins in the camp, leading to the death of thousands. Yeah, his character is basically Dr. Malenge, but with gas instead of medical experiments. While they were talking, Recondo had regained consciousness and escaped. He was the only one not tied up, which was a rather silly mistake for elite Mossad agents to make, and so Recondo is able to drop in on the vile Nazi bastard. Back in Greenland, Yeah, I do have to jump around between storylines this time because they affect each other. Breaker throws a grenade at the approaching his tank, causing it to slip into the blast crater and out of control, careening off the cliff. Firefly and the troopers with him jump off, but the driver isn't so lucky, getting stuck on the side of the cliff. Back in Brazil, deals are being made. Otto just wants the Joes to protect him from the Israelis, boasting that he doesn't want any money because he's got lots of Nazi gold. Clutch convinces the Mossad guys that they should attack the compound together, so they have a better chance, and settle their differences afterwards, saying that Abraham outnumbers them anyway. And he agrees to this. You know, from their reputation, I always thought of Mossad as one of the most ruthless and efficient special forces. But so far, they've left a prisoner unbound, unguarded, and are now arming people that they may have to fight later. I guess reputation isn't everything. At alternative altitudes, Alpine and Airtight advanced at an aircraft. Okay, I'll stop that. Alpine examines the flight logs, while Airtight looks over the canisters. His driver is a sore loser though, and shoots at them even as he's falling to his freaking death, hitting one of the canisters. But if the nerve gas explodes, wouldn't that also kill his Cobra buddies? Then again, they did just leave him hanging there, so maybe it's right to say screw those guys. At the same time, the assault on the compound is pretty much over in one page. Yeah, they even comment on the fact that the Nazis don't put up much of a fight, and they find Otto. Meanwhile... Yeah, like I said, I have to keep going back and forth. Airtight discovers the gas is binary, so it has to be mixed to be deadly. If they can just get rid of the gas that's already leaking, there'll be no nerve agent. The problem is, the gas escaping is extremely flammable. They start venting it anyway, and try to get the hell out of there. While they rappel up with the help of their friends, 2 Cobras rappel down, only to cause some sparks when landing, blowing them up but good. Luckily, this destroys the flammable binary agent before it can mix, and the day is saved. Huh. Somebody should tell that to the gang in Brazil. And they do, right on the next page. Much to Skull Guy's chagrin, they report the threat has been neutralized. Alpine has also learned from the documents on board that there were 2 planes, one for the bombing run and another carrying that gold Otto now has. He was flying the gas bomber and tricked the other one into landing, pretending he had hydraulic trouble. He then killed the other crew and flew off with the gold. The gold that had belonged to victims of the camps, by the way. A Nazi being untrustworthy? Who would have thought? He used some of the gold to live a life of luxury for decades. I don't know why I've got alliteration on my mind today. Until the Israelis tracked him down, forcing him to seek refuge with Hans and his merry men, convincing them that he had lived a life in poverty all this time. This doesn't endear him to anybody, and you've got to admit it takes something to be the most unpopular Nazi in a room. But he says the Joes gave their word they'd protect him, and they are men of their word, so they do protect him, from the Israelis, who they promptly order to leave the compound, which they do. Yeah, the deal was specifically to protect him from Jewish retribution. Ain't nobody said anything about protecting him from his fellow Nazis. So they leave him in the loving care of his friends, and the comic ends with shots being heard from the building, and Clutch with a grim look on his face. And that was Words of Honor. And it was another great special missions issue. Though I do have 2 complaints. Firstly, there's the ending. I would have done it a bit differently. Sure, I'd still have the Nazis kill Otto, but I'd also have the Joes tip off Brazil there were armed and dangerous Nazis there. So maybe they should go in and put a stop to that. Or call in an airstrike, it's all good. Also, Otto still has his gold at the very end. You can hear him offer it to Hans as a last-ditch effort to save his life. Yeah, I would have had the Joes or the Israelis take his frickin' gold instead of leaving it with the other Nazis. I mean, why wouldn't they? It belonged to victims of the concentration camps. Of course you'd take it and try to return it to their descendants. Would have been nice to put that in the story, considering the world's bad track record at returning Nazi gold. Looking at you, Switzerland! My second complaint has nothing to do with the writing, the art, or any part of the story. It has to do with the ads.
Let me explain.
Unless you're reading from a trade, comic books are gonna have ads in them. In this case, that means you go from talking about nerve gas, concentration camps, and the Holocaust, to a few pages later seeing a frickin' Smurf talk to Kissy about NBC's Saturday morning lineup.
This is such a tonal whiplash, I think I cracked some vertebrae.
I mean, you go from Nazis to Foofer, from the Holocaust to the frickin' gummy bears. For crying out loud! I know Marvel saw the G.I.Joe comic as just a toy commercial for kids, but it was so much more on occasion, especially with issues like this, and the ads they run should reflect that. Overall though, yeah, great issue. They managed to handle a sensitive topic like this pretty damn well. Death to fascism.
I'll see you next time, everybody.